Hello everybody. We are starting this episode with this position. Please take your time and find the winning continuation for black while I introduce today's lesson. It's about calculation, guys, we'll be speaking about today. There's a concept, layman's concept, that people think that what separates a grandmaster is how many moves ahead they can calculate. In fact, that's not true, given what we know from scientific evidence. What separates an expert is their ability of seeing the best move in the position using their pattern recognition rather than their search depth. They can surely search deeper, but usually they are much better in calculating short lines accurately by limiting themselves to the best options on the very first move, right? Experts' pattern recognition skills allow them to find the best move instantly. And that's why, for example, Magnus Carlsen tells you that he just sees the best move immediately and he spends the rest of his time double checking his vision, right? Or look at Nakamura's bullet skills, for example. I mean, the guy is a genius when it comes to bullet chess, which means he can really find great moves without necessarily searching deeper or calculating deeper. And he just basically, good moves appear to his mind directly, right? So experts are great in generating several candidate moves that speak to the position. They have great understanding of what the position requires from them. And instead of searching deeper, 10 moves deep, they are great in calculating short lines accurately. And that's exactly what we will train in this episode. And that's also why I created a Chessable course that's titled Fundamental Chess Calculation Skills. Please go and check that course, folks. That's for beginners, intermediate players. You will enjoy it for sure. I also published one more YouTube video about the art of chess calculation. Remember, in that video, I was listing 3 fundamental steps of when you calculate in chess. First step, which is often neglected, is the orientation phase, right? Before you start analyzing moves, you have to orient yourself to the position and understand what the position demands, what it requires. You set your goal properly. Is it a positional puzzle? Is it a tactical problem? You will set your goal, because if you set your goal nicely, then nice candidate moves will appear to you naturally, right? After goal setting process, you generate several candidate moves. Instead of falling in love with a single one, you give yourself choices, okay? And you look at the best reply by the opponent against your moves. So you should be like a scientist. You should see counter evidence instead of wishful thinking, okay? And finally, before you make your move, you make the final blunder check, which means you have to look for the forcing replies by the opponent. Let's apply this lesson to this position, okay? Let's set your goal properly with black. I mean, you're down an exchange. It looks like you will lose the game unless you find something active right now, using your pass pawns here or here and the ability of your knight to create chaos, okay? That's our goal, which means we have to look for most active, forcing moves in this position. And I want you to list your candidates first, right? What are our choices? Before you pick one move and calculate like in depth, please list all the candidates that look reasonable to you. To me, A2 definitely should be checked. D4 check definitely should be checked. And knight A4 check definitely should be checked, right? Knight A4 and D4, they are checks. In some sense, they should be checked first. A2 is also a very forcing move because you just want to, make a queen. So we are searching, looking, listing, right? Listing all 3 reasonable candidates right now. So before you fall in love and spend half an hour in one of those candidates, now you know, right? You have choices. So if one candidate move offers big resistance to you, it turns out to be very difficult to calculate, you will take a step back and you will ask yourself whether some other candidate move is giving you much better solution, right? This is the advantage of generating several candidate moves on the very first move. Folks, let's do it together. First of all, I will show you the great solution. You're a great player if you saw the entire line and not only the first move, right? And here we talk about calculation. Knight A4 check is a clear fork. The king can go to C2 or B3, and against both of these options, I hope you saw your reaction as black, right? King C2, A2, and the pawn queens. The white king cannot stop the pawn, right? And after king B3, I assume you saw your next move, right? Knight C5, fork. Just look how beautiful the entire line is. It's only 2 key lines, right, that you need to calculate after knight a4. That's what I mean by short and crispy calculation. Only 3 ply deep, right? The king has only 2 moves against your knight a4 check. And against both of these options, you have a great follow-up. It's as simple as that, right? A mistake would be, first of all, let's eliminate a2 directly, because this allows king b2 and the king will stop your pawn, right? That's easy to refute, basically. But I assume many of you also fell in love with this d4 check idea, and you might have assumed that after d4 check, the king must take the pawn, and then your pawn queens. But we are not playing checkers, we are playing chess, so you should be like a scientist. d4 looks great, but what if he does this, right? He's just stopping your a pawn, and some of you might still take it from there and start analyzing d3, right? You can spend half an hour in this entire line, only a single branch, right? But here, white has so many choices. For example, you might miss from afar that white's a very strong reply, rook d6 in this position, and the rook is stopping your pawn. There is no way for you to make use of your passed pawns here, and white wins the game. Maybe you assumed, maybe you had a wishful thinking that the king has to take that pawn, and then voila, yeah, d2, and now the pawn is queening because rook d6 will be answered by knight c4 fork, right? But that will be wishful thinking, right? I've seen it so many times as a coach. People engage in wishful thinking when they calculate, right? After d3 here, white doesn't need to take your pawn. We're not playing checkers, right? So the entire line becomes very difficult to calculate for black because there are so many options also for white, right? In all these branches and so on, that you must be very careful of not to miss a detail, because if you miss that detail, you'll be losing this position, right? You're down an exchange basically. So that's a final advantage of listing the candidate moves on the very first move, folks. Can you see the beauty of this, right? You might start with d4 check first, right? But the moment it gets murky, the moment you feel like it offers great resistance, it becomes difficult to see all this, you take a step back and you ask yourself whether some other candidate here is giving you a great solution, just like knight a4, right? Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful calculation, folks. Yeah, 2 very short lines, and black wins directly as a result of this check. Now, I will show you a King's Indian example. It's black to play here, folks. Remember the last position, the key lines, there were only 2 key lines that you need to calculate, yeah? 2 key and short lines. Here, I will show you a position that involves 3 key lines that are also equally short. First things first, we are setting our goal, right? Orientation phase. Well, it's a King's Indian structure. We are playing on the king side, right? Our target is the white king on f2. All of our pieces are lined up on the king side. So, the reasonable candidate move appears to be f3, correct? f3 looks very reasonable because you want to open up lines on the king side. So, you start analyzing f3 in this position, and you see that no matter what white will do, you have a beautiful continuation that wins directly. For example, f3, if he takes with the pawn, then you have rook h2, right? Skewering. If he takes back with the queen, you see it, right? Rook f4. And if he takes back with the king, there is bishop h5 skewer. Look how beautiful this entire thing is. Short but accurate lines. And after f3, of course, if the queen goes somewhere on only one, then obviously you just take on g2 and you manage to open up more lines. There are more threats that are facing the white king. White king has become naked and you reach your goal, right? So after f3, Grigorich move, white resigned the actual game because there's nothing that white can do. It's collapsing on the king side. But you see, it's not like, the master is calculating like 10 moves deep here. It's much more shorter, but crispy and accurate calculations. And that actually dominates master's games. People have this misconception, master can calculate 25 moves deep. Well, as Ricard Reti says, right? He doesn't even sometimes calculate 1 move ahead, right? He just sees the best move. And also Capablanca, they usually attribute to Capablanca, yeah? How many moves can you see ahead? Only a single move, but the best one. There's actually truth behind these claims, folks. Masters, they are great in short but accurate calculations. Evaluation of the final position is great for masters, but also orientation phase. What is our goal here? Our goal is to open up lines on the king side in this case, right? One final example here that shows us the importance of generating several candidate moves on the very first move, okay? It's white to play, and white is down a piece, which means our orientation phase, our goal setting, we have to play actively right now, right? Otherwise it just gets too late. So I'm looking at those forcing moves as candidates. How many forcing moves do I have, folks? I have this and I have this, right? So far, I'm seeing those checks first, and that's very important to see those checks instantly. But for example, can you able to identify one more candidate move for white that is worth analyzing before you start spending time in those moves? Can you see one more reasonable candidate for white besides knight c7 and knight e6 check? Well, folks, you're a great player if you noticed bishop c7 move, a beautiful attack on the queen, and suddenly the queen is lacking short of squares, and no matter where the queen goes, it will be game over, because if the queen goes there, then comes knight e6, and the queen has to give up herself, otherwise you get mated. And if the queen goes here, then comes this beautiful fork. Notice the beauty in this calculation. Two very short lines, and white wins the game, right? The problem for many players in this position is that they don't even see bishop c7 as a candidate, right? They can spend half an hour in analyzing this move, for example, knight c7 check or knight d6 check. They can spend their entire time on this move, analyzing in depth the consequences after this move, right? So it's a great skill to take a step back and list those candidate moves on the very first move. That speaks to the position. As Dvoretsky said, most calculation mistakes happen on the very first move in chess, right? So you're a great player if you notice this beautiful move, and white wins the game effortlessly. And I will leave you guys with this homework position. White just took on d5, okay? And we are searching for a great continuation for black. I want you to tell me two key lines, short but accurate calculations, and black wins this game. Not only the first move, I want you to tell me two short lines that gives black a winning advantage in this position. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, please give me a like and subscribe. I will continue more of such series and positions on calculation. Please check out my course again on Chessable. It's called Fundamental Calculation Skills, that will train these fundamental abilities that I just taught you today. Also, my video on Art of Chess Calculation involves similar themes. And I will catch you on the next episode, folks. Thank you so much.